All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a really important document, a guide from Brazil's National School of Public Administration, and it's all about one big idea: how to build a government that actually looks like the people it's supposed to serve. So let's just jump right in with a question they pose at the very beginning. Seriously, take a second. If you had to build a work team of 5 people, who would you pick? Who comes to mind? The people you choose, and maybe more importantly, why you choose them, well, that gets right to the heart of everything we're talking about today. Because, you see, that question isn't just some HR exercise. It's about building a government. And for a government to work, for it to be truly fair and effective, it has to reflect the society it represents. So let's dig into why that is so incredibly important. To really get it, we first have to understand the concept of a vulnerable group. Now, this is key. This isn't about individual weakness, not at all. It's about a structural disadvantage, something baked into the system because of history or social forces that puts certain groups of people at a much greater risk. And believe me, this disadvantage has very real, very serious consequences. We're talking about being literally invisible in the data that drives policy, facing harmful stereotypes, hitting wall after wall when trying to get basic healthcare or education. And when these groups are also missing from the halls of power, well, their needs, their perspectives, they just get ignored. And here's the thing. Fixing this isn't just a nice idea or a suggestion. In a place like Brazil, it's a constitutional duty. The state is legally required. It's their job to actively tear down these walls of inequality. Okay, so you know there's a problem, and you know you have to fix it. But where do you start? Well, like with any big project, you need the right tools. And for this, the most basic tool is language. We need to have a shared vocabulary for what we're actually trying to do. First up, diversity. Now, this word gets thrown around a lot, but the guide is really clear that this is about so much more than just, tolerating difference. It's an active and committed way of thinking. It's about recognizing, respecting, and genuinely valuing those differences as a source of strength. This brings us to a huge one: equality versus equity. They sound similar, but they're worlds apart. Think of it this way. Equality is giving everyone the same exact box to stand on to see over a fence. But equity is smart. It recognizes that people start from different heights, so it gives each person the right-sized box they need to get the same view. It's about fairness, not sameness. And finally, there's intersectionality. It might sound like a complicated academic term, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It just means that people aren't one thing. A person's identity is made up of many parts: their race, their gender, their ability, and these parts overlap and intersect to create unique experiences and challenges. So we've got our vocabulary down, but what do these ideas actually look like when we apply them to real people in a country as massive and diverse as Brazil? Let's take a look. The guide zooms in on several key groups that consistently face these kinds of structural barriers. And remember, thanks to intersectionality, we know these aren't just separate lists. These categories overlap and combine, creating even tougher challenges for a lot of people. And the sheer scale of this is, well, it's staggering. Research from IKEA, Brazil's Institute for Applied Economic Research, found that 72 million people live in families vulnerable enough to need social programs. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. 72 million. So what does work look like for these folks? This chart paints a pretty clear picture of instability. Only a tiny slice, just 19%, are in formal jobs with regular paychecks and protections. The vast majority are scattered across agriculture, self-employment, or informal work, often without any kind of safety net. Okay, so that's the reality on the ground. It's a massive challenge. So how can the public sector possibly start to tackle it and fulfill that constitutional duty? This is where we get to the good stuff: turning these big ideas into real, concrete action. A core idea to make this happen is called representative bureaucracy. And it's actually a pretty simple concept. It just means the people working inside government should look like the people on the outside. The public service should be a mirror that reflects society. But, and this is a really important but, it's about way more than just appearances. A political scientist named Friedrich Mosher made this brilliant point way back in 1968. He said there's passive representation, which is just being in the room. But then there's active representation. That's when public servants use their own life experiences to champion their communities and actually shape better policies. So how do you get there? Well, the guide lays out a clear roadmap. You have to actively recruit diverse talent and then make sure the workplace is safe and respectful. You have to create real channels for citizens to have a say. And you have to constantly ask yourself, is this policy we're making actually helping, or is it accidentally making things worse? And here's the bottom line. A government that looks like its people isn't just a fairer government, it's a smarter one. It's more creative, it's more innovative. Diverse teams just come up with better solutions that work for everyone, not just a select few. It's about effectiveness. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. What role do we want our public institutions to play? Do we want them to be a passive mirror, simply reflecting the society we already have, inequalities and all? Or should they be an active mold, helping to shape a more just, more equitable, and more representative society for all of us?